Hey guys, this is Illusion Podfics. We're on Chapter 9 of Spider-Man Reborn by Kieran, so without further ado. 2 months after Tim's return, Peter finally was beginning to settle down again. He blatantly refused to let Tim leave his sight, and he had clung to him constantly. Thankfully, Tim had planned to stay for another 2 months, making Peter's goal easier to achieve. His dad had tried talking to him about it, but Peter didn't need to talk about it. He just wanted Tim to be safe. He hadn't wanted Tim here in the first place. He tried to chase him out. Tim was safe when Peter hated him, and the moment he changed his opinion, Tim was gone. It was Peter's fault that Tim got hurt. Not long after he was giving Tim his space back, another new person showed up in the manor. Peter wasn't sure why his dad kept bringing kids home, but now there's a blonde girl sitting in the boring room with Tim. A new person he, once again, never heard about. Who are you? Aw, he's as adorable as he said. I'm Steph, the girl cooed, pinching Peter's cheeks before he could dodge out of the way. He scowled, rubbing his cheek before hiding behind the armrest near Tim. Tim, throw her out, Peter hissed, glaring around Tim's shoulder. Stephanie cooed at him while Tim laughed. He was glad Tim was laughing again. Clearly, he was outnumbered. His dad had accepted that Peter's known he's Batman, but he still tried to deny the kids are his sidekicks. Peter knows he heard about a new one that joined the duo already, but he didn't think they'd move in too. Do all of Batman's sidekicks just move in? Peter always wanted siblings, but 2 was enough. Then Jason disappeared, and now there's 2 more. He now has a grand total of 3.5 siblings. She's a friend, Peter. Tim ruffled his hair as Peter tried to bite him. Biting has proven to be a good deterrent with his siblings, even if they manage to dodge him each time. Be nice. Fine. We're watching Finding Nemo. Peter stomped to the coffee table, ignoring Steph's cooing and Tim's laugh. Couldn't his dad at least bring someone his age in? Everyone is bigger and older than him, and no one will teach him to fight. Steph? Yes? Steph smiled, her eyes brighter as she looked down at Peter. He had to convince her. He will go insane if his dad teaches these kids to fight and keeps Peter playing with Quack and Zika. Peter took her hand with both of his, staring up at her with his best puppy eyes. Can you teach me to be like you? I want to be a hero too. She has to fall for this. Aw, Pete, you're too cute. Steph giggled, pulling Peter into a tight hug. He could hear Tim's snort while he suffocated in her arms. I don't think Bruce would like that, but if you can keep a secret, I'll teach you how to punch where it hurts, okay? Perfect. Okay, let go now. Peter wiggled out of her grasp, gasping for air when he finally made it out. Slinking far, far away, Peter grabbed the remote before climbing onto the empty couch, away from the terrifying girl. Maybe she could teach him to suffocate people like that. No, that seems lethal. Peter pressed on the remote while he eyed the girl next to Tim. At least she'll teach him something. He can expand from there on his own, but he doesn't know how to start when he's this little. When other vigilantes give him lessons as Spider-Man, he was a teenager already. He's too small now to know how to use his size against an opponent. Peter focused on the TV when the anemone showed up on the screen. Marlin and his wife swam into frame. Stephanie kept coming back. At first, Peter didn't mind too much. He would either hide something else or demand to learn from her. She taught him how to throw a punch, but after, she mainly talked about the parts of a man he could reach with a swing. Peter decided it was pointless, if a little terrifying. Steph was scary when she wanted to be, and he felt a little threatened with how excited she talked about hitting thugs in that way. Not long after her arrival brought something else new to the manor, mainly the fight between his parents. Tim says they do this often and not to worry, but his mom and dad had a fight big enough where his mom left to stay at her own home, taking Peter with her for some days. Peter's time was split between homes, and he spent more time calling back to make sure his family was safe and alive, now that he stayed away some nights. The stress from being away for even a day bothered him. How could he ensure the longevity of his family if he wasn't around? How could he make sure they all made it home safe? He wasn't sure what they fought about, but he hoped they would get over it soon. His mom had a large condo in Gotham where Peter would stay on weekends and every other week. He's been trying to get them to talk now, though. It was stressful and terrifying to live with her there. His mom was exactly what the name Catwoman had you believe. Her house had more cats than an animal shelter. "Mom! Pickles is trying to eat me!" Peter screeched, racing away from the fat cat chasing him. He had to fix this, if only to save himself. "Pickles is just being curious, kitten." His mom scooped him up before Pickles reached them. Peter clung to her as the cat made fake innocent eyes at her. "She won't eat you." Pickles meowed like she was agreeing, but Peter could see the threat in her eyes. He didn't believe it for a second. "Come home, Mommy." "Get me away from here. I'm not cat food." His mom carried him away as Pickles sauntered off, her orange tail flickering in the air. Peter watched the cat enter his room and knew he was sleeping with his mom tonight. He did not want to lose a finger in his sleep. Steph was the easiest out of his new siblings to get on board with his shenanigans. Maybe he could convince her to help him get them back together again, if only to save Peter from being eaten by Pickles in the middle of the night. "I want to see Steph." Peter tugged at his mom's hair to get her attention. She hummed before placing him on the kitchen counter. Another cat, Princess, was already on the counter. Princess, at least, didn't try to eat Peter, so he didn't fuss. "You'll see her on Monday, Kit," his mom promised, shifting through the fridge for dinner. Peter focused on Princess, who in the meantime decided to curl over him. Princess was a white cat and extremely fluffy, so Peter loved her the most. He ran his fingers through her hair as she settled on his legs. "Can she come over now?" "Just be patient, kitten." Peter closed his eyes as his mom kissed his head. He'll be patient for her, but he still doesn't like Pickles. "What do you have in mind, young Padawan?" Steph beamed, taking up the entirety of Peter's bed while she stretched over it. "I need Daddy and Mommy to stop fighting." In other words, Peter's lifespan's short the longer he spends it around Pickles. Well, that's easy." Steph rolled over, her phone in hand already as she looked something up. Peter climbed onto his bed now that her limbs weren't everywhere. He slotted himself at her side, staring at the museum website she had opened. Peter watched her flick through a few links before an Egyptian exhibit came up, with a golden cat statue as its centerpiece. Take her to the museum. Peter Parker would never condone thievery. Peter Wayne Kyle was half thief, biologically. He could condone it if it gets him away from Pickles. At least, this one time. Peter stared at the picture of the gilded cat, emerald eyes staring back at him through the screen. It reminded him of an artifact Black Cat stole once. Spider-Man ran into more lampposts than he ever had in his life that night. He wasn't sure how this would bring his vigilante dad back to his thief mom, but if it made them talk it out, then he would support it. Perfect. Peter and Steph shared a grin, ignoring the wary look of Timothy Drake at the door. "Stay close to me, kitten," his mom warned before Peter could run off for the Egyptian exhibit. He groaned, falling back in step with her quickly. A week of planning with Steph and a little blackmail to keep Tim quiet all came together today. Peter just had to get his mom to see the exhibit, and since he was spending the night with his dad, she will have free time to come here for it. Maybe Peter shouldn't encourage stealing, but, well, Pickles. He couldn't be too obvious, so Peter dragged her to the Greek and Roman halls first. There was an entire wall dedicated to the Amazons and Wonder Woman, which confused Peter for all of 2 minutes. She was like the Thor from before Peter made the mistake that cost him everything and landed him here. It had been a mistake that had made him lose everything, yet he gained so much more too. Peter knew he was in the same universe as before, based off the tech his dad had around the house, but seeing the proof in front of him was jarring. He heard about the vigilantes and superheroes, but Peter hadn't thought he went that far. New York wasn't the only city with heroes. How could the spell send him here? Was it this spell or something else? Homesickness rarely came up when he was surrounded by so many people at home. Home. Wayne Manor had become his home since he'd been born. Since he had 2 older brothers and both parents. Since he had people who loved him so much, and since the second chance to protect them came around. Still, sometimes he misses what he built before. His family before the bite, and even after. He dragged his mom away after a minute, not wanting to reminisce for too long, or he'd cry. He still hadn't gotten a handle over his emotions yet, but he will. Soon, soon, soon. They continued down into the hall into the mezzanine, before crossing to the Egyptian exhibit. Peter stifled a grin as they walked past tombs and hieroglyphs. The cat statue was somewhere here. He just had to bring her to it. It took a total of 5 minutes before Peter spotted it. The golden cat with emerald eyes was placed in a podium near pictures of Sphinx and the other images of small marble figurines. Peter ran ahead to look up at the podium, trusting his mom to be right behind him. "He looks like Pickles," Peter pointed out, the yellow coloring reminding him of Pickles' orange fur. "At least this one wouldn't eat him." "This one looks more expensive than Pickles," his mom mused, staring at it. Peter pretended to not notice her calculating gaze, internally dancing at the chance that his parents would stop arguing and putting his life in the paws of Pickles, his newest nemesis. "It's pretty, too." Peter stood on his toes to look at the cat closer. Hopefully, this will somehow get his parents talking again. He didn't know why they fought, but for a few weeks he was being dragged between houses, and he was tired of it. He wanted to stay in the manor with everyone, so they had to talk it out. With the trap in place, Peter just had to make sure he could stay up late enough for them to return home together. He took his mom's hand, dragging her to the gift shop for his own cat statue that wouldn't try to eat him. "You should be in bed, Master Peter." Alfred turned on the lights in the kitchen, inciting Peter to set the bright lights. "Alfred!" Peter squeaked when he saw the butler, Grandpa. How did he forget about Alfred? Indeed. "Off to bed now, Master Peter." The elderly man was still dressed in his usual attire. Peter was pretty sure Alfred didn't own any other clothes. He wasn't sure the man even slept. Peter climbed off the chair. Arguing with Alfred never worked. "I was waiting for Mommy and Daddy." Alfred hummed, directing Peter to the round table in the corner of the kitchen instead. Peter eyed it warily. He used to eat there when Alfred wanted to keep an eye on him. Usually that happened when Peter was causing too much trouble everywhere else. Still, he got into the chair as Alfred turned on the kettle. Peter watched him move around the kitchen, collecting a tin of tea leaves and putting biscuits on a plate. He wasn't sure if he was in trouble or being consoled. "Why do you think your mother will be returning alongside Master Bruce?" Alfred placed the plate of biscuits on the table before returning for the tea. Peter didn't touch the biscuits yet. Alfred preferred they ate it with the tea. "Because Mommy and Daddy have to talk." Peter pouted at the ice cube in his red cup. He didn't need sippy cups anymore, but he still got the plastic ones instead. Peter hadn't dropped the glass cups in forever. "And you think they will tonight?" Alfred pushed the plate of biscuits closer as Peter reached for one. Steph had promised to tell him everything in the morning, but Peter knew that his mom would go back to the museum tonight for the cat. The exhibit was ending tomorrow, so this was the best time to snag it before they boxed it away. His dad would have to intervene, and then they'll talk. His mom will come back to the manor, and Peter won't have to see Pickles again. Yep. Alfred caught his hand before he could fish for the half of the biscuit that floated to the bottom of the cup. "Alfred!" Peter took the proffered spoon and fished out the soggy cookie before eating it. "And why is that, Master Peter?" Peter and Alfred both knew the man was aware of what he did. Alfred denies knowing everything, but Peter never believes it. "You already know." "Enlighten me, if you will." Peter rehashed the plan to Alfred, repeating Steph's idea and the museum visit, how Peter made sure his mom saw the value in the statue before they left for the day. His mom had enough time after dropping Peter home to plan and organize the theft, especially as she broke into that museum before, and they never updated their security. Tim had taught Peter how to read blueprints, as they went over how she could break in, and he even showed him the security cameras and their blind spots. Peter knew his dad wouldn't approve, so he didn't tell Alfred about that part. "You should be in bed, chum." His dad leaned on the doorway leading to the dining room, wearing sweatpants and a large black sweater. Peter nearly threw himself to the floor, thanking Alfred for catching him before rushing to hug his dad. Since Tim, and now Steph, his dad wasn't out as late or so angry and quiet anymore. "Daddy!" Peter didn't have to climb his dad before he was scooped up. Peering over his shoulder, Peter tried to stifle his disappointment when he didn't see his mom there. "Where's Mama?" His dad sighed, nodding to Alfred before Peter was carried to the stairs. He saw Tim duck around a corner. "She isn't coming here, Pete." Did they not talk? Steph said they would get together if his mom stole the statue. Maybe they didn't have enough time. Or was his mom in jail? Peter thought through the possibilities while his dad took him in his room. Did he send his mom to jail? "Where is she?" "She went home, chum." His dad sat on the bed, dipping it with his weight. Peter followed the dip, sliding closer to his dad as he frowned. "This is home." His dad placed a hand on his head that Peter leaned into. He'll have to figure something out. Maybe he could lock them together somewhere. Steph would definitely help him with that. Peter flapped his arms to keep himself upright, Dick's hand catching his side before he listed too far left. The beam was only a foot off the ground now, but his older brother was always stressed when Peter tried anything remotely dangerous. "You're doing great, Pete. Want to keep going?" Dick kept a hand on his side until Peter waved it away. He balanced himself before taking another step forward. "Yeah, I can do it." Peter's feet were small enough that walking on the beam wasn't difficult. The problem came from the lack of floor on either side of him. Dick stayed close by as Peter inched forward, placing one in front of the other. He slowly made his way to the other end. It had taken Peter an entire week to convince Dick to raise the beam higher, so he was going to make the most of it. Steph had been so busy she couldn't help Peter with his plan to get his parents talking again, but watching Parent Trap with his dad didn't seem to work. "Will Mommy come back?" Peter was halfway across the beam now. "You know she will, bud. She's always there for you," Dick soothed, smiling sadly at him. Peter didn't like the pity. He knew that was part of the reason Dick raised the beam for him. His parents would get over whatever fight eventually. Tim said they were like this even before Peter was born. He didn't know if Richard and Mary were like this before, but he was sure that it wouldn't be the end of anything. His mom would be back eventually. "You did it, Petey. Good job, Puissard." Dick scooped him off the end of the beam, twirling them around as Peter laughed. He bounced away from his brother once he was back on his feet, running back to the start. "I want to go again." Peter couldn't pull himself up without a step stool, but Dick was quick to lift him back onto the bar. He just had to be patient. Once Steph came back, he could put his plans into motion. The rainbow chalk was looking all right, if only they had the indigo color. Peter stared down at the artwork with a frown. He tried to remember the colors that make it. MJ once explained it to him about the color wheel, and none of it was coming to mind now. "How's your side going?" Steph called from where she sat with her own chalk. "I don't have the right color," Peter sighed, turning to leave his incomplete rainbow. Walking over to the other side of the driveway, Peter took in the drawing Steph made, a crude drawing of the vigilante spoilers standing on a box. Or a building. What's that? Maybe Peter should draw Spider-Man. "This is the greatest vigilante Gotham has ever had." Steph grinned. Peter left her side with the idea in mind. He had the colors to draw Spider-Man, though he wasn't sure how to explain that when Steph will undoubtedly ask. That would really be a problem for later Peter. He crouched near his rainbow where he collected his chalk to draw the newest art piece. Alfred might appreciate the color added to the usually dull driveway. Drawing was still not a skill Peter possesses in either world, it seems. Spider-Man came out looking more like a bobblehead mounted on a red stick. Biting his lip, Peter focused on the lines of web his suit had on his mask. At the very least, he could remember this. "What's that, Peter?" Steph joined him after finishing her own piece, sitting cross-legged beside him. "Me? As a vigilante? That doesn't really look like a bat." Steph hummed, eyeing the butchered mask Peter tried to replicate. I'm Spider-Man. Later, Peter probably should have considered how his age plays into the reveal. He couldn't be Spider-Man yet, and his family would just see it as playing. He ducked out of the way as Steph went to ruffle his hair again. I am! Course you are. Batman and his Spiderling. The perfect pair. Steph laughed, managing to wrangle him in a hug before he could get far. Steph was supposed to help him with his parents. She was the sensible one who went along with his plans. Her plan so far had been drawing, and while Peter couldn't see where it would lead to exactly, he wasn't about to argue. Besides, he had backup plans if this didn't work. This, though, was not part of the plan. Spider-Man. Sure thing, Spider-Man. I'll get Bruce. Just wait here. Steph grinned before dusting herself off. She left quickly just as Alfred's face peered through the kitchen, eyebrow raised at the colored driveway. Peter grinned, waving at him before rushing towards the first piece they drew. 8 figures stood hand in hand in front of the chalk manor. Steph had to help make the manor look more realistic, though with her drawing skills, it looked a little more haunted. Peter grinned at the 8 faces of his family all together. Hopefully, this will remind his dad to talk it out with his mom. Peter could not keep up with their spats, and he certainly didn't want to face Pickles again. Peter. His dad sat Peter on the bed in his parents' room. His mom was back, but Peter knew she wasn't living here full-time again. Her hairbrush wasn't on the vanity, and she only had 1 perfume bottle left here. We need to talk. His dad and Tim were out a lot more lately. Steph was too, but she hadn't come by since they covered the driveway in chalk. Tim said she was busy, but Peter's still worried. Did they find Jason? Was someone hurt? Peter looked between his parents, seeing the sad look in their eyes. Peter felt sick. Something was really wrong. Okay. Steph was hurt badly last night. His dad started, taking a deep breath as he took Peter's hands into his. Peter felt his mom curl around him, her hands wrapping him in a hug. He didn't understand, though. If she was hurt, then she should be here. Alfred and Dr. Tompkins would help her, and Peter could scheme with her again. They had plans together. She died, Peter. No. Stephanie was annoying and loud, and pinched his cheeks. She wasn't dead. She can't be dead. She's Tim's friend. She's a family friend, not family. The curse couldn't touch her. It shouldn't have. She should have been safe. Was it because he thought of her as a sister? Was he at fault again? MJ should have been safe too. No, she isn't, Peter argued, tears blurring his vision. His voice warbled, but he couldn't stop. He didn't believe it. He couldn't. She can't be. She's missing. You gotta find her, Daddy. You gotta bring her home. She had to be alive. She just had to hide. Daredevil did that once. Pretended to be dead while preparing for a counterattack. Steph is smart. She could have planned it. His dad just had to find her. He shouldn't be here. Because he should be looking for her. Steph needs to come home. I'm sorry, Peter. His dad cupped his face, wiping the tears with his thumbs gently. I'm sorry. No, she has to be alive. Jason has to be alive. Peter knew it. He had to know it, because otherwise, his family will keep dying, and Peter can't stop it. Peter can't do anything. Why can't he do something? Why can't he help? Alright, and that is the end of Chapter 9 of Spider-Man Reborn. Hope you like this chapter, and I'll see you in the next one.